Amen indeed. I want to welcome you tonight, whether this is the first time you've ever darkened our door, whether you've been a part of this community of faith your entire life. We want you to know that wherever you are on life's journey, that you are welcome here. And you're not just welcome, you are wanted. You're not just accepted, you are loved. This is an open-hearted church for curious-minded people. And we are so glad that you have chosen to worship with us on this holiest of nights. There's so much that could be said on a night like tonight. There's so much that should be said, and maybe just as much that shouldn't be said. Fred Craddock, a famous preacher, once said that the role of the preacher on Christmas Eve is to stand up, to speak up, and then shut up. And to let the music carry the message. It's easy to do on a night like tonight. There's something magical about Christmas music. Not just the songs that we sing here in church, but all of the songs that you've been hearing all over town for the last, probably 6 months now, it feels like, doesn't it? It's almost like Christmas has its own soundtrack, and some of it is beautiful. And some of it, if we are honest, is awful. So here's what I want to suggest, that if tomorrow you're gathered together with friends and family and somebody brings up politics, I suggest you divert the conversation and instead suggest that we come up with our own list of the best and the worst Christmas songs. You'll still get all those opinions flying, but it'll be a little less dangerous. I have my own list, and I suspect that you have yours. At the top of my worst list is Last Christmas by Wham. Anybody hate that with me as much as I do? George Michael was no theologian. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. Friends, that's not a Christmas song, that's a breakup song. Just because it mentions Christmas doesn't make it a Christmas song. Next, you're going to try and convince me that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. But on my best list, of course, is Silent Night, which we will sing in a few moments. O come, Emmanuel. And of course, my all-time favorite, one that we will hear a little later in the service, O Holy Night. And I know I'm not alone in that being a favorite. I posed the question on Sunday in my sermon, what's your favorite Christmas song, the one that makes you feel all Christmassy and goosebumpy? And I had a number of people that came up to me that morning and say, O Holy Night, far and away. Anything else is a distant second. You know, the history of that carol is somewhat fascinating. It was written in 1847 by a French winemaker by the name of Placide Cappeau, who loved to write poetry in his spare time. But here's the thing. He was an atheist. Despite that, a local priest asked him to write a poem that could be sung at midnight mass on Christmas Eve to celebrate the recent renovation of their church's organ. And he did. He wrote a beautiful poem. And when he was finished, he asked his friend Adolphe Adam to write the music to it. Now, Adam was a composer of mostly operas and ballets in Paris, who also happened to be Jewish. Didn't celebrate Christmas at all. So I find that somewhat fascinating that one of the most beloved Christmas carols of all time was written by an atheist and sung to music composed by a Jew. In fact, for several years, the carol was banned in the French Catholic Church because of the writer and the composer's background and lack of faith. But that didn't seem to matter because it spread across France and people would sing it quietly in their homes. To this day, it remains one of the most beloved, one of the most widely performed Christmas carols, recorded by some of the greatest voices. Like I said, one of the most beloved Christmas carols of all time, but unlike many others, this is one that we don't sing. In fact, it's not in the hymnal that's there in front of you. Usually it's performed by soloists or choirs. And the reason for that is because it is really hard to sing. That last line, it gets to the crescendo and it skips an octave and it holds this high note. Most of us can't do that, at least not very well. As one musician told me, it is a singer's minefield, a lesson in humility. And therefore, I believe, best left to the professionals. But it's more than a song. Its lyrics speak of the hope of Christ in a very weary world, the light and love of Christ that shines in the darkness. There's that great line in verse 1, the thrill of hope, a weary world rejoices. I can't help but feel like the word weary is a good word to describe our world. I know sometimes we come to church on Christmas Eve feeling like we're supposed to feel all warm and fuzzy. But I know for a lot of us, this year feels different. It's a weird time with all that's going on in this world, some of it hopeful and some of it heartbreaking. And many of us feel unsettled, broken, maybe even alone. In fact, for many of us, weary is an understatement. Now, O Holy Night, as you will hear, is a fairly long song, and so it's not uncommon to try and shorten it. And oftentimes, when it is shortened, it's the second verse that gets cut. And I believe it's not just for the sake of time. Listen to one of these lines from verse 2. In all of our trials, born to be our friend, he knows our need, to our weakness is no stranger. You see, I would argue that on a night like tonight, we don't much like to sing about trials, about needs, about weaknesses. That's no fun at all. It makes sense that it's often dropped. It's easier to sing about babies and angels and joy to the world and silent nights. You see, that lost second verse is so raw, so personal, so uncomfortable. And so I get why we drop it, but when we do, I would argue that we miss out on one of the most important parts of the Christmas story. And that is that we have a God that doesn't stand at a distance from what is hard in our lives, but dives straight into it, meets us right where we are. One of my favorite Christmas songs is one that we don't sing in church. It's called Labor of Love by Andrew Peterson. And maybe we should sing it because it paints a very accurate, a very vivid picture. The song starts by acknowledging, hear these lyrics, it was not a silent night. There was blood on the ground and you could hear a woman cry. The stable was not clean and the cobblestones were cold, and little Mary, full of grace, with tears upon her face, had no mother's hand to hold. Not exactly a pretty picture that you might find on the front of a Christmas card. Sounds more like a mess to me. But it was into that mess that Jesus came, not to take us away from life's struggles, but to walk with us through all of them, to remind us that we are never alone, and there is hope in that. Emmanuel, it means God with us in the form of a child, not like anyone expected or even wished for, but an answer to prayers nonetheless. It was God who had come down to us, not standing at a distance, detached from our lives, but a thrill of hope. And so a weary world rejoices. Jerry Askew is an Episcopal priest in Tennessee. And he tells the story of a man that approached him one day in a parking lot. His clothes were clean, but it was fairly clear that it had been a while since he could afford new ones. He hadn't shaved in several days, maybe even a week. He didn't seem threatened, but simply came up to Jerry and said, I know you, but I suspect you don't remember me. And Jerry confessed that he was right. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Tell me, how do we know each other? He didn't give him his name. Instead, he simply told him a story. He said, I'm a 65-year-old gay man, and I haven't spoken to anyone in my family in almost 30 years. I've tried, but they don't want anything to do with me, and most of my friends have moved away or they've died. And last Christmas, I got so lonely, I decided to give up. I decided that I was going to end it all, but before I did, I decided to take a walk, and I'm not sure how I ended up where I did. I don't live near there, but there I was. And I found myself in a neighborhood that was dark, and I was so cold. My fingers and my toes, they ached, and I couldn't stop shivering. But it was about that moment that I looked up, and there was a small church not too far away. Had its lights on. Clearly, Christmas Eve was going on, and I hadn't been to church in a long time. Most churches don't seem to like people like me much, he said. But I was so cold. And so I thought that maybe I could just slip in the side and no one would notice me while I warmed up. And so that's what I did. I snuck in the side door and found a seat in the very back pew. And you, he said, you were preaching. But I have to tell you, I don't remember a word you said. To which Jerry said, as I would say, that's okay, I get that a lot. But when you finished and you sat down, another person stood up and said, may the peace of the Lord be with you. And just like that, everyone in the place stood up and started shaking hands. They started hugging one another, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. I had never seen anything like it. And then someone noticed me. And she came up and she took my hand and she said, Merry Christmas. My name's Anne. Who are you? And I told her my name, and she told me that I'm glad you're here, and I hope you come back. Well, then, before I knew it, she had introduced me to somebody else, and then another, and then another, and then another, and before long, I was pretty sure that I'd met everyone in that little church that night. And every single one of them told me that they were glad that I was there, that they hoped that I'd come back, and they wished me a Merry Christmas. That night, he said, for the first time in a long time, I felt like it might just be possible that somebody could actually love me. And I am here today. I am here today because those people in that little church, they gave me hope. And so when I saw you today, Reverend, I wanted to come introduce myself and to say thank you. You know, part of the reason that I love O Holy Night and the story behind it is because Capot came to the story with fresh eyes. This non-devout, non-churchgoer, he saw the birth of Christ as the dawn of a new day, a thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices. And so, friends, on this night, hope is not loud or flashy. It's born quietly in a stable and carried into this world by ordinary people like you and me who believe that love still shows up, that love meets us right where we are. O holy night indeed.